You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 276. My name is Clark from 5cardguys.com. You can also find me on Instagram and YouTube at 5cardguys. Co-hosting with me, as usual, is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards. And John's back, and you can find him at TradeU at Recess, and they're both on IG as well. All right, we're getting closer and closer to opening day of the 2025 MLB season, so that's exciting. And I don't think we talked about this yet, but the league is kicking off the season with the Tokyo Series that has the Dodgers playing the Cubs in Japan on March 18 and 19. Obviously, it's in part to showcase the growing Japanese talent in the league with arguably the face of baseball, who is Mr. Shohei Ohtani. Now, what I want to talk about off the top is what Topps and Fanatics is planning to do to commemorate this moment and how they're marketing it, okay? And we did get some recent announcements, which include Topps collaborating with one of Japan's most famous artists, Takashi Murakami. And the first release was a 2025 Topps Series 1 Baseball Tokyo Game exclusive set, which has Murakami designed base card variations numbered to 5, plus several additional inserts not found in the standard Series 1 release, which, side note, we were just talking about this off air, we'll be breaking later tonight at our local rip session with our buddies. So we'll show you whatever hits we get from that case. Anyway, the second is a 25 card Topps times Murakami MLB Tokyo Series matchup set, which is more aligned with the Murakami designed merchandise release with his signature floral designs. So I don't know if you guys checked it out. It's already on the Topps website. I think you could, or on their social media, you can see some of the shirts and the hoodies that will be on sale, I think beginning tomorrow on the Fanatics website. So yeah, question for you guys. What are your thoughts on Topps collaborating with artists to promote the hobby? You know, do you think it'll be a success, or will it be kind of hyped for the moment and fizzle out like the Project2020 series, if you remember that, or the Project 70, where Topps collabed with artists and had their unique spin on their baseball card designs. So what do you think?
I think both are true.
Okay.
I think it's going to do well just because the Los Angeles brand is so big. And the way I see it is like, and John's was involved in the sneaker culture before, but I think that's what they're doing really well is the culture. So from an apparel standpoint, from a collector's standpoint, I think the apparel they're releasing is going to be a massive hit. I think it's going to be sold out. Right. And then to me, it goes hand in hand with what they're selling as a culture that bleeds into kind of like the niche of sports cards, right? And especially if it's branded the same, LA Dodgers 2025, you got Roki, you got Yamamoto, you got Ohtani, you have Ichiro, you have all the Japanese culture. So for me, from a demand standpoint, I think Fanatics is doing a fantastic job making it global, and that goes hand in hand with MLB's, I guess, future direction with baseball as well to make it a global sport. So, I think it's going to be successful. I think it's going to be super hyped, like you said. That comes with the territory, and I mean, I'm not expecting crazy things to come out of the sports collectibles area for this, but for instance, I would be interested in the set. Like normally I would not participate in the Topps now, depending on like the 50-50 would have been a really good opportunity to participate in that. Like just stuff that makes sense from, I guess, a moment's perspective. But this in particular, I'm going to also be purchasing or trying to purchase apparel, for instance. You know what I mean? So it's more than, I think, just will this be successful from a sports card perspective. I think there's more to it, where I'm even a testament, I guess, to something that I normally wouldn't be a part of.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you're definitely more bullish on the apparel side of things, but how about on the cards more specifically?
I do think there's going to be huge demand, especially if they make chases as usual. So, but with chases becomes enormous hype, right? Like we've seen these hype markets. Every crypto chart that pops looks the same. Every real estate, boom looks the same. There's a massive correction, and then if it has legs, it's a slow and steady growth after the crash, right? So it depends on where you want to play in the game, and some people like the volatility. I think that's going to be the number one thing with demand and supply. So right now there's a huge amount of hype, so expect the crash, but there are, I think, rare collectibles that I think Fanatics in general is doing a good job to keep it exciting.
Agree. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I have similar opinion. In terms of the from the sports card standpoint, like long term, this is definitely a little bit more niche, and it's probably geared again, like Hyung touched on it, and we've touched on this before in previous podcasts, where Fanatics is doing a great job of merging sports cards into sports culture rather than trying to gain from the existing sports fans. Sports card enthusiasts. You're trying to gain
Right.
from sports fans, and I think that's what this set is about. So from that standpoint, it's amazing. I'm sure there's going to be initial hype, but like long term, this is probably more niche. I don't see this being like if you're in this to invest in it, and then, it's more for like a personal thing, and maybe unopened packs, or maybe you hit a crazy card in it and could be a bit of an investment piece. But I don't see it, being anything worthwhile for like a hardcore sports card collector. But yeah, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably go on a bit of a tangent, but all of this stuff that Fanatics is doing, and the things that they're doing with Topps now, like this stuff is, some can criticize it and say that it's a bit gimmicky, but I don't know. It's all amazing. We're about to do Rip Night tonight, and we saw like in doing Rip Night, I'm trying to think of like something to open, and I was thinking of hockey, and you're looking at SP Authentic Future Watch, right? And I'm just watching, I want to really dig into whether it's worth it to get it. And you're watching videos, and like Panini and Upper Deck are really, maybe Panini doesn't care because they're sayonara, but like Upper Deck, for example, they're really missing the mark. Like the old school thinking is,
Right.
how are we going to make money, and how are we going to print more boxes? Let's just make more parallels. And for Upper Deck's case, like SP Authentic is like, that is the set that merges all sports card collectors into hockey, right? Like this is the set that people outside of hockey are going to go for. And how do they do it? They're going to make all these young kids, instead of signing 999 autographs, they're going to make them sign 5,000 autographs and create multiple retro fusion watches and sign of the time rookies, and
Right.
the product just ends up being this is an old school way of trying to make money. Whereas if you look at Topps, and as much as we can criticize Fanatics and Topps, look at how quickly they shifted within 1.5 years. Like, uh, the major league debut patch ideas, all these different chases, the Topps now triple auto chases, like, not even in just, it can be like, WWE and stuff like that. Like that, they really, and I'm sure you can say, you can argue, oh, they have the money, they have the resources, but they shifted quickly. And it's like,
Yeah.
it looks really poor on all these other companies are still doing it the old school way of trying to make money by just printing more boxes. Like that's come on. So anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, bigger picture, venting discussion, like whatever Topps is doing, even if it is these collabs, and some people might criticize, I'm all for it, because as long as it's different than the way business has been done in the past, I'm generally for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And to your point, I feel like what Fanatics is doing well is that they're trying to grow the fan base by catering to people outside the sports card community, right? That might be interested in sports cards in the future with these collaborations. And they're also giving new chase cards, new chase sets for people that are currently in it. So I agree with you there. And that gave me an idea for a future episode. Well, we can talk about like all the ways we can improve Upper Deck if we owned it. Let's like kind of put our, creative imaginations together. And then I'm sure we could come up with a bunch of great ideas. And then, I think that'll be a fun episode. Couple things in mind for me. One argument against whether the sports cards collaboration side of things will be a success is we've already have like these Japanese dual autograph cards from previous Topps sets. So it's nothing really new, right? Like it'll be cool to get an Ichiro, Ohtani dual auto, of course. But it's not novel, like we've seen it in previous sets or other Japanese players, Darvish and, Ichiro. So that's been done. But an argument for the popularity and maybe even this set becoming worth something in the future is that the Japanese sports card and sports baseball in particular fan base is growing, right? So one of the things that I read in the Athletic article where I got a lot of this information is that Ohtani and the Dodgers beating the New York Yankees in the World Series last year set viewership records in Japan, even though the games aired in the morning there.
Crazy.
Right? So like Ohtani is definitely, a big presence in Japan culture right now. His merchandise, Ohtani's merchandise, has made up a staggering 57% of Fanatics' total MLB sales in Japan over the last 5 years. Yeah. Right? Their Dodgers merchandise sales in Japan have increased 2,000% year over year. Right? And this is, I don't know if you remember when we were hoping that Ohtani would come to the Jays. We're like, pay him whatever you want. You'll get the money back 100%, right away.
Always. Yeah. You have the whole market, Japanese market that's willing to pay top dollars. Yeah,
imagine if that had happened, we go to Japan, you're going to see a lot of Blue Jays uniforms if Ohtani had come to the Jays, right? And the last point was that they said Topps says it expects a 10 times increase in sales and collectors in Japan over the next 5 years. And the last question I want to kind of present to you guys is one of the things that's up in the air in terms of whether that can happen, this tremendous growth in Japan, is whether Ohtani himself could sustain it. Right. Do you know what I mean? Like right now, it's just Ohtani wave. But there's questions of if you really want to increase the number of sales and collectors in Japan, it's going to have to be more than Ohtani at some point. Do you think that's the case?
I think so, 100%. I think this is just a pathway that merges that global baseball with MLB. And we're seeing it because if MLB wants to be defined as the best organization in the world, you need to have a global expansion where you're proven, because what's happening from a WBC and the Premier 12 standpoint is if you're losing that from like the part of the world where either Latin America is dominating or Asia is dominating and US is not that front runner anymore, there's a huge threat to MLB in general, in my opinion. So the way you lock that in is you go global, and guys like Ohtani, like I said, back in 2012 when Ohtani signed, the talks were that it's unheard of that someone would from Japan would commit to basically MLB. Because it was like, what are we doing to Japan's mindset was, what are we doing to the future? What generations? What are we telling them in terms of where the best baseball is? We believe that Japan has the best baseball, right? So seeing the transition from that to now, it's a pathway that Ohtani kind of led. I think it's going to bring so much more opportunity. It's going to have kids wishing that they're going to be the next Ohtani. You already see it with Yamamoto and Sasaki. These are the best arms in Japan, representing Japan on a global scale in the best league in the world. So for me, it's more than just Ohtani. This is a bleed into the global market where now it's like, who's the best country, and it's not about where the best country is because we have tournaments to kind of like compete for that. But in general, I think the market is becoming a global market, which is positive for everybody. If I'm a collector, now my Shohei cards are worth way more. If I'm, after Yamamoto, or if I have, Roki Sasaki cards, it's like those are more desirable in a different market. Try selling Vladimir Guerrero in Japan. Probably not going to sell, or nor will it affect his prices. But someone like Ohtani, you have a huge global market. No different than like a Messi or Ronaldo, but it's really amplified from from a Japanese perspective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see
Yeah,
that.
has to definitely go beyond Otani, which makes me think, are we headed to a Fanatics Topps collab with Pokemon?
Oh,
Whether it's like a
interesting.
full art
Yeah, I
Pokemon
mean,
like case hit insert, or it's Pokemon
Right.
cards with
yeah.
sports athletes in Pokemon style. I don't know. That I think that stuff would go crazy.
Who manufactures Pokemon cards?
Good question.
Or who's the license? Or like, how does it work? Like, is it Pokemon in-house?
I feel it
I feel
might
like
be.
it
these
is,
cards
right?
out?
I think
Yeah.
Pokemon
Roy needs to
Center.
The brand?
answer this
Yeah.
question.
All right. We'll ask him during Rip Night.
Yeah.
It's just if he knows the answer. But yeah, that would be insane if that
Yeah.
collaboration happened. But yeah, and to be fair, Topps, they're planning to release more Japanese specific products, including the NPB, their country's baseball league cards, which already exist, but they're continuing that set. There's J League Soccer League and another Japanese market specific MLB product with Ohtani. So they're kind of doing both Ohtani specific stuff, but also promoting the Japanese baseball league as well.
And I think just in general, it will do well in Japan, like card collecting in general, because
Sure.
they are aware of baseball. But then to bring up John's point, like Pokemon is such a big cultural thing. And if you look at what's a reputable brand in Japan from a a collecting standpoint, would be the PSA brand, for instance. People see Pokemon and PSA slabs. So I think it's a really easy crossover for people to buy into baseball, because from a branding standpoint, it's nothing new. They see it in Pokemon. So they see PSA 10 slabs or PSA 9 slabs in baseball slabs. It becomes kind of like secondary buy-in for them, just because of the co-branding of what they're used to from a Pokemon standpoint.
Yeah. And we already talked about this in a previous pod, but that's why PSA is expanding their operations in Japan. It makes total sense from a business standpoint. All right, exciting stuff. And I'm with you. I'm going to be online trying to buy its shirt tomorrow.
Yeah,
hopefully it
you
doesn't
and me
sell
both.
out that quick.
I think it's going to sell out quick, though.
Sure.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. All right, let's move on to hobby headlines. So it's another new month, which means Gemrate.com just released the latest data for the previous month, February. And so I thought we could see some of the key findings. We could dig deeper into them and discuss what we think about some of the current trends that we're seeing. All right. So first, overall grading activities up 5% in February compared to January, and up 20% year over year. These numbers for February actually set a new record for grading activity with about 1.93 million cards graded. And that surpasses the previous high set in October 2024 of last year, which was 1.87 million. All right. The breakdown between grading companies for this past month is as follows. PSA, they graded 1.44 million cards, which is up 17% year over year. CGC, they graded 287,000 cards, and they're up 75% year over year. SGC graded 146,000 cards, and they're year over year exactly the same, 0%. And then Beckett graded 53,000 cards, and they're down 19% year over year. The only grading company that's seen significant decrease. Now, before I go on to share which athletes were graded most often at PSA last month, what do you guys think of the grading numbers I just shared with you guys? And just the fact that we're experiencing these record highs right now in terms of the number of cards being graded.
I think two important factors, like based on the numbers you kind of shared, is one, the market is expanding, so it's I think proof that the market's growing in general. Sports card collecting, more people are submitting, so that's a healthy trend, as well as market share. The second thing, Beckett and SGC losing, a lot of shares. PSA probably taking those shares because of resale value or whatever it is. I think those are the two major factors of kind of like the numbers that you possess. And then the short term from January to February, I think that's a lot has to do with spring training hype. Obviously, more people are submitting baseball right now before the season starts. So I think you're going to see a little bit of that. The CGC graded cards, that the 75% or year over year, I think that number is massive, but that's just probably the Pokemon
TCG.
Yeah. Kind of like the hype over the past year. And a lot more people are submitting. So, I mean, this is really good data because to me, it paints a clear picture of what's actually going on. So you see a market increase as well as, just the seasonal increases based on where you are. But it looks like Beckett and SGC has lost a lot of market share. That's basically gone to CGC and PSA.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, I think we most of us know, and I think I heard it somewhere that a lot of this is influenced by the surge in Pokemon, right? In the last little bit. And it makes sense because CGC does have a bit of a footprint
Yep.
in Pokemon. So then for their numbers to be doing pretty decent year over year as compared to the other alternate brands, it makes sense. It just now you really wonder where PSA is just continuing their stranglehold, right? Like if you don't like PSA, I think a lot of people actually have been using CGC, maybe even in sports cards. But SGC and Beckett, my goodness,
Yeah.
like I still think from back in the day when we chatted about this a lot, like I really thought it was kind of a mistake for SGC to kind of take that discount route. Like it really made their brand look like a discount brand,
Right.
and yeah, kind of cheap. So now now
Yeah.
that brand
Yeah.
sort of image has crept into consumers' minds. And at this point, if you're going to spend 20, 25, $30 for grading, even if you thought you can get an SEC 9.5 or a 10 over a PSA 9, you're still, everyone's going to submit to PSA. So I don't even know where SEC and Beckett, somebody's got to save them from the grave at this point. Because they're halfway down, man.
I don't think that
Yeah.
necessarily is a bad move for PSA to make SGC kind of like a lower tier brand. Because if you think about it, if you're trying to get a marketplace, people don't want to submit at PSA prices because they're expensive, the upcharge. They're still capturing the marketplace of all graders. Let's just say all graders are your potential. So for me, it's like, would it be strategic to kind of get both markets instead of competing markets? Right? And because then it will like tell people like, hey, PSA is lower value, man. They don't hold value in their slabs. I'm going to go PSA. It makes me make a decision, not like, oh, should I go PSA or SGC? It's like, it's a clear distinction. But from a PSA and collector standpoint, it's still benefiting both companies at the end of the day because you're getting the guys that grade at the $10 and John, I remember like looking at this data too, and I'm saying last year SGC did that $9 special. Maybe it's something that they do every year. You know what I mean? Just a basic grading. It's like $9 a slab. It's not PSA. Resale values won't reach PSA levels. Some people may pay for particular cards, but I think it's not necessarily a bad thing from a business like collector standpoint where they're now defining two markets and their whole idea was PSA is the top. PSA is number one. There is not. So if you're a PSA, what would you do? You would buy a company like SGC to prove that you're number one, but still capitalize on the marketplace.
Yeah. Definitely a smart business move by PSA at the time when they acquired SGC or Collectors Holdings. And because they are under the same Collectors umbrella, I think what Hyung mentioned makes total sense, keeping SGC as their kind of discount brand.
Yeah.
Although, that wasn't the original purpose of SGC. And maybe even like to add to that, SGC is still known for their vintage card grading, right?
So maybe exactly where I was going to go. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe specialize in that. Like, I don't know how you differentiate or make it better, but you have a division called SGC Vintage.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then you make the slabs look nicer specifically just for vintage cards.
Nailed it. Yeah, that's exactly, you stole the words out of my mouth. I think SGC, like if FGC was $7 to grade, the three of us here, I don't even think we would still do that. We would still pay $20 to go, because that's just not their field. But if you did, that's exactly what I was thinking. Focus more on SGC Vintage, get rid of the current slab. You can keep the tuxedo, whatever you want to do, but make it way more premium. The slab is way more durable. It's heavier, whatever it is for vintage that really appeals to like a hardcore vintage collector. And then come out saying we have the foremost experts in vintage grading. We are the place to go. Like, I think if they focused on that niche, and it's easier now that they're part of the PSA umbrella that they can now do this. Before, when they're on their own, obviously they're up against PSA, so they got to do what they can. But I think for SGC as a brand, I think something like that would definitely be the move at this point.
Yeah, we're aligned for sure. One of the other follow-up questions I have for you guys, and we kind of already discussed it already, but whether PSA is really the only long-term viable grading company, unless some of these other grading companies pivot or kind of target a different niche crowd within the sports card community. But do you see any of, other than PSA, if you had to bet which one of these grading companies would just close up shop, which one would it be?
Close up shop?
Yeah. I asked because I have a specific answer in mind.
Okay.
Of the four?
For me, it's not.
Of the four. Okay. Yeah, I mean the remaining three.
Right. Remaining three. PSA. Man, closing up, I don't know. I think there's going to always be a market, especially like I'm still big on the Beckett brand just in general, because I think there's so much assets still in terms of that company. So it's just a matter of their leadership being able to see kind of like the challenges that they're going to be facing or they're faced with right now with the market and where they are in the overall picture. So I think there's always going to be opportunity. It's a matter of leadership. So Beckett was just purchased. We believe, or we have to believe that, that's the right move, because the state of Beckett before it was bought out was definitely not working. So I'm just waiting to see kind of like that trend. So, but I'm thinking, because Beckett still has a lot of value and history, that they're going to be able to pick up market share as we go. But it all depends on the leadership. And I think that's already taken care of. So we'll see in the next year or so the trajectory of Beckett. So I don't think it would be Beckett. I think there's still room, because think, if it's an emerging marketplace, there's always going to be growth. So I believe in the emerging marketplace. So whether it's Beckett, whether it's a next grading company that pops up, they're going to see the inconsistencies within PSA, CSG, and SGC and say, okay, we're going to do this better. But then obviously it's going to be very difficult to go against the giant. But at the end of the day, that's how markets work, right? So.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't think it's Beckett. So what do you think is SGC or CGC?
If I had to choose, I don't think any, because they play all a role. They all play a role, where it's like PSA established themselves as the top, and then SGC's that secondary brand with rich history in the vintage, and then CSG is growing a lot because of a totally different market, right? So it's like, where does that leave Beckett really? It would have to be Beckett out of all four, but like I said, they've made the right moves. And they could go head to head with PSA, at least get some market share back.
Yeah, understood. I'm just laughing because this is Vintage Chung. He doesn't play by the rules. I said if you had to choose.
No, the question doesn't make sense. God damn it.
You won't choose one. But, okay. No, I get you, though. What about you, John?
At first glance, Beckett is the easy answer. And most especially, we
Mm-hmm.
don't know their new ownership and leadership, and if they crap the bed here and really sink Beckett, because they're on the brink, right?
Right.
So that's the easy answer. But when I look at it, for assuming the new ownership does a decent job of keeping Beckett afloat and maybe reinventing, I actually think it's SGC has the greatest because they just don't have a
Mm-hmm.
differentiating factor on the market, right? Like Beckett still has the black label, which a lot of Pokemon collectors surprisingly use.
Yeah.
Nobody in the Pokemon community uses SGC, so that's scrapped out in terms of like TCG.
Mm.
But Beckett also has
Yeah.
the grading, right? Like the subgrades, which some people do like,
Subgrades.
right?
Right.
And a lot of like Bowman Chrome first autos and the 10, like there's still something about, and they have the legacy. There are market differentiating factors that appeal to the consumer enough for Beckett
Yeah.
to prosper. Whereas SEC really at this point, they don't have anything. And I think they lost their vintage play too. Like they're not known
Mm.
as the vintage
Right.
guys anymore. Even vintage collectors use PSA, I think, at this point. So
True.
I should see,
I
I
agree.
don't know. Like I think they're the ones on the hot seat right now.
Yeah. I totally agree. I asked this question because I think the knee jerk answer and reaction will be Beckett, right? Just
Right.
because they're down 19% year over year, the numbers keep going down. But again, what both of you guys stated, I do believe they could turn the ship around with the right leadership, and they have the brand equity
Mhm.
still, even that, which is incredible. Like they've been going down, but uh, people still like BGS slabs, and I'll say one thing though. It is harder to find BGS graded cards in the ones that are more modern cards, like 2024 Bowman or
Yeah.
23 Bowman. It's like, wow, everyone's going to
Right.
PSA now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like back when we started collecting like the Mookie Betts and all those guys, yeah, you could easily find BGS 9.5 slabs. Now it's like, man, it's few and far between.
Right.
And so that's saying something about the state of Beckett in recent years. But I totally agree with what you said, John. I think SGC is the most redundant in terms of what they're
Mhm.
offering now, and the fact that they're under collectors, it's an expense for collectors
Right.
at this point.
Right.
So I could see them like, hey, we want to save money, let's just fold it and then just offer everything under PSA, which is why I asked the question. But yeah, I think SGC. That's my answer as well. It'd be interesting to see what our audience says or what our listeners think. So yeah, if you agree or disagree, we'd love to hear from you. You could always DM us at Cards to the Moon or at 5 Card Guys on Instagram. Okay, before we move on to the next segment, just quickly, the athletes whose cards were graded most often at PSA last month were, here we go, I'll go 5-1. Number 5, Caitlin Clark, 14,800. Number 4, Paul Skeens, 15,900. Number 3, Victor Wembanyama, 17,000. Shohei Ohtani, number 2, 18,500. And number 1, Michael Jordan,
That's interesting.
19,200. Yeah, still, Michael Jordan cards. Crazy. Obviously, MJ cards have ton of value in high grades. So that is more the amount, I guess, still that gets graded. That surprises me. But 2 questions from this data that I'm really curious about. We talk about pitchers. Are they really investable over the long term? But obviously, Paul Skeens is the guy in terms of pitching. Do you think he's a generational player or a generational pitcher more specifically that he is worth really, grading and just holding on to? That's my question 1.
So, question one, I think Paul Skeens, talent wise, is a generational pitcher. Yes. He is a guy that it's like if you're saying who's the next Verlander, who's the next guy that's going to dominate the big leagues, it definitely, from a talent perspective, is Paul Skeens.
Mm-hmm.
The question is whether, people are expecting that to be right now. I think that's the problem with all prospects, right? Even if it's like, I know pitching is very rare and you only get, one in a decade that people are after. There's no really big pitching. But I think the game is changing a bit because when we got back into collecting, it's like pitchers and catchers, no go. All right. You kind of, don't invest, but you see even guys like Tariq Skubal, who won a Cy Young now, and he's kind of highly collectible too. So you're getting a lot more action, I think, from a market standpoint. So I think pitchers are starting to be more collectible, but like I said, the longevity is the kind of question mark for pitchers, and why original collectors don't like necessarily investing in prospect side of pitching. You'll see a lot in the marketplace where they're later on in the career and they realize, man, this guy was one of the best arms in our generation. They become a lot more desirable at that point. But I think Skeens and Skubal and other young prospects are changing the way we're perceiving collecting. And maybe we'll discuss this later, but I think there's a bigger macro reason why as well.
Mm.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm kind of undecided whether Paul Skeens is a one-off or if he's kind of bringing pitchers back on the map in terms of collectability. I think I can't speak. But the first part of your question, I can't speak to his generational talent. I don't know enough to know. That's more on Hyung. But I think Paul Skeens is more of a one-off. If I'm being honest, I think he's more akin to Cale Makar, defenseman in the NHL, where if you just happen to be
right.
known as a generational whatever pitcher, generational catcher, generational goalie, I think it'll just be at that point the collectability becomes sort of undeniable. So I feel like that's where Paul Skeens is now. Whether he can uphold that and stay healthy and be consistent, time will tell. But yeah, in terms of his early hype, I do feel it's a bit of a one-off, and anyways.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if this is going to be a hot take, but I think Paul Skeens is a trap. Major trap. Okay?
Let's hear it.
Roy, you gotta sell.
Roy, you gotta sell quick. Sell quick. Maybe this season even. But it's kind of what you said, Young. With pitchers, it's longevity, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you said this too. With all prospects, it's longevity. You need the career stats. But with pitchers, there's so much more opportunities for injury, right? Because you're throwing so hard, especially these days. These guys are throwing at least 100 miles per hour, which is, can't be that great for your arm repeatedly, right? And I think I read an article recently saying Clayton Kershaw might be the last pitcher to hit the 3,000K mark. The last pitcher. Because the game's also changing.
Right.
Pitchers aren't going deep into games, 5-6 innings, 7 maybe, and then you got a setup guy and you got a closer. And, unless you're striking out 15 guys within those 6 innings, which, Skeens could probably do every once in a while, but, to do that consistently over, many seasons. I'm not willing to find out if Paul Skeens is that guy for 10 years down the road. I'm going to flip him.
Do you guys think Roki Sasaki or Otani or Yamamoto would change that narrative going forward? You're seeing more and more big time arms now, and think these contracts are getting bigger and bigger too.
Yeah, that's a good question. For me personally, I think all pitchers are great short-term flips. There's a game now that you can do short-term flips with pitchers. Before you're like, I don't want to take the risk, they might get injured. But now, if you pull a Yamamoto, you got 1 or 2 year window to make a nice flip.
Right.
And same thing with Skeens, same thing with Sasaki. That's my point of view.
It's interesting because if the pitcher's market dictates that, there's going to be a point in someone's career where people are like, it's so cheap.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like a Corbin Burns or, Clayton Kershaw and Verlanders are kind of priced out now, right? Yeah. So it's like because of that marketplace, there's going to be a point in time where somebody's going to be like, this is a good buy. This is a good long-term buy based on this guy's career. So I think you're right. There's ebbs and flows of that marketplace where there's going to be maybe kind of like that Bo Bichette lull that we always used in the last couple of years as an example, where it's just like no love, right? Yeah. No matter how good they are until they hit a certain status. And at that point, the minds that are in it for long term, or as a collector that value like high end sports cards, they see the potential in 15, 20 years, and they're like, this guy's going to be, the greatest pitcher or whatever it is. I think the mind shifts in terms of real collectability. So you're right. All this hype, all this marketing is all hype, if you really think about it.
Yeah, no, totally. But you know what? I'm going back to my point. Scherzer, Verlander, Kershaw. They're the last of the Mohicans. We're never going to see the pictures like that again. I just feel just very strongly about that point. And because I feel that way, I don't know. Like, is it wise to hold Paul Skeens for long term? You might as well make a quick buck right now and then invest in, players that have a better chance, like positional players, sluggers. There are better long-term holds.
I don't disagree. But at the same time, we said that about Ohtani too.
Ohtani's a unicorn, okay? There's always a unicorn.
So Ohtani's the exception.
Yes, exception. Okay. That's what I meant. All right, last question before we move on. Wemby. I don't think we talked about this. I talked about this with Paul Hickey on Friday's episode, but any concerns with his health? And, there's obviously a lot of people are on the bandwagon because of what he's done within the first 2 years of his career. But does this change anything for you guys?
I just think the hype is too big. Like I said, it's going to be. And it depends on how his career unfolds. Like, there's obviously going to be a crash in the market. That pace that we were going at the last year can't sustain itself. There's obviously like a huge demand for it, so that crash is inevitable. And for me, it all depends on what you believe in Wemby as a player, and when is the right time to buy now. In terms of his career. So it might be 2026, 2027. We don't know that but in terms of the flip market, it's going to be tough, especially if he's not playing. If he's injured, it's going to be very tough. But at the same time, that's when the buying periods do happen in a volatile market, right? So I think Wemby, a lot of people like him because of the volatility, and a lot of people are in it for the flip, but true value, I think it's going to eventually correct itself, especially when we have economic downturns, right? So you have an emerging market in an economic downturn. So take it for what it is, because there's going to be a balance of both fake value or fake, valuation, and then a real correction. So for me, it's all about buying at the right time. I do believe in Wemby as a player, so there's that. But like I said, if you're buying and you believe in the player, like a Steph Curry, if you invested in Steph Curry back in the day, you probably do well. So if you believe that Wemby is that type of player, and there's certain type of cards that are cheap, then yeah, 100%, go for it. But other than that, I would stay away.
How about you, John? Any injury concerns even?
I'm with Hyung. I think the injury, is there some long-term concerns? Maybe it's a blood clot, right? Like in his shoulder?
Yeah.
Or something like that? Yeah, so medically, maybe there are some long-term concerns, but I think overall, this certainly helps kind of simmer the hype a little bit. So if you are a Wemby believer, it makes it a little bit easier to get back in the market. And I think Wemby, going back to the Paul Skeens thing and Wemby, we just know like years 1 to 3, especially when you're talking about generational talent, it's highly it's just not advisable to spend your long-term strategy during the hype phase. It doesn't matter who you are, it's going to come down. So I think if you are a long-term believer in Wemby, if you are a long-term believer in Skeens, I think I'm with you, Clark. The move is, if you happen to hit a great card, sell it. And if you really do believe in Wemby, really do believe in Paul Skeens as a long-term generational talent, you will have opportunity to get back in 100%.
Yeah.
Right? I think everybody's kind of scared of missing the boat because of what's happening with Ohtani.
Right.
But he might be like the one exception amongst the thousands of pro athletes in sports cards. So I think you're pretty good odds. We're not getting another Shohei situation. Like look at Luca. Like his,
Yeah.
I mean, albeit his pricing was at its peak because of the whole COVID era, but
Right.
I mean, even him, he's not untouchable. His cards have come down immense amounts. So
Yep. No, I agree. Not much more to add. And like I said, when I was speaking with Paul Hickey, I'm still a believer in 1B. And if anything, with this injury, with this blood clot, I think if the market does come down, this might be a buying opportunity. But you still have to monitor how much it comes down, and then believe that 1B will come back full strength whenever he does. Okay, let's move on now to our next segment, Quiz Show. All right, we saved this. We were going to do it a couple weeks, but John, you've been busy, and we're like, let's do Quiz Show when John's back because it's more fun with both of you guys on. So, a few questions. First one, I'm going to ask you about cards that sold for $1 million or more, all right, in the past few years. First question is, how many have sold for over $1 million already in 2025? What do you guys think?
Oh, there's no multiple choice. It's just straight up answers.
Okay, I'll give you multiple choice. Yeah. 2, 3, 5.
In the last how many years?
2025 alone.
Oh, 2025.
The past 2 months.
3. Oh, in the
were
past.
there any? Well, I was gonna say 0, so I'm glad I don't have that option.
Man, I want to say 5, but I'm gonna say 3 actually. But
Okay.
I think 5. I wouldn't be surprised.
Splitting the difference. Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with the C, like the typical C answers. 3.
Yeah, I don't even recall any $1 million sales, and it's just probably eluding me. So I would think it's the lowest number then, if I can't remember. If it was 5, I'd be like, okay, one or two of the 5 I would have recalled seeing $1 million sales. I'll go with 2.
Correct answer is 3. You're right, Young, in this case. Number 1 was 1916 M1014 Sporting News Babe Ruth. Sold for $1.372 million, PSA 7. Second one was the 1955 Topps Roberto Clemente, PSA 9. Sold for $1.006 million.
Wow.
And that was number 3, actually. And number 2 was the 2003 Upper Deck LeBron James Exquisite Collection RPA, numbered to 23, BGS 8.5, 10 auto, sold for $1.22 million on Golden. There you go. So there's 3. This is kind of a part 2 of that question. In 2021 and 2022, we saw the most number of cards that sold for $1 million. That's during the COVID hobby hype. Combined, how many sold for over $1 million in 2021 and 2022? I'll give you some multiple choice. Okay. Around 60, around 80, around 100.
What?
Is that? Are you serious? That was that many
Combined in 2021 and 2022 during the COVID hobby hype.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Holy.
I got to go with the lowest one here.
60, around 60.
Which is
combined.
crazy.
Okay.
Which is
Yeah,
insane.
that's already crazy enough. I'm gonna go with 62.
Okay, the correct answer is around 80. Okay, 83
Wowzers.
to be exact. 2021, there was 42 cards that sold for over $1 million, and 2022 there was 41. So 42 plus 41. That was a crazy time. It was a crazy time in the hobby. People
Were they reselling to each other?
People will look back during that time. It's like, wow, what was that era like? Those 2 years of collecting. We're like, those were the Louis Robert years, you know?
That's what happens when you get low interest rates, right?
Yeah. All right. 2 more. I had to take out this segment from the last episode with Hyung that you and I did. because I didn't realize the Cheetozard. You guys know about the Cheetozard?
Right.
That wasn't that was on an auction, but it wasn't the final price, and we're talking about it as if it were. And I thought 8,000 was crazy for that Cheetozard. Most of you guys know by now it sold for over $87,000.
That's nuts.
That's
a piece of Cheeto.
That's nuts.
That looks like a
That's not
Charizard.
real, is it? There must be something weird. Like,
Yeah, I think Lamine James had a post saying money is not real after seeing this, this sale of a Cheetozard of 87,000. Reportedly, the question is, it originally sold on eBay a few years ago for how much? Okay, $100, $350, or 1,000.
What year was this?
It said a few years ago.
A few years ago? I'm saying $100. Somebody paid $100, and everybody said this guy is absolutely insane. Both buyer and seller are absolutely insane. So I'm going to say $100.
wow.
100, okay.
I'm gonna say 1,000.
You said that.
I could still. I mean, if people are crazy now about it, I could still see them being kind of crazy about it back then.
That's true. I'm giving you all the answers right down the middle. It's 350 reportedly for this Cheetozard a few years ago.
Should have known.
Insane.
Which is a nice return, 350 to 87,000.
That's insane. I do admit the casing is kind of nice.
The casing is worth 86,990. Yeah, that's kind of cool, actually. All right, last one. NFTs. We thought NFTs were dead, but the Prism Caitlin Clark Gold Vinyl 1/1 NFT. Okay, not the physical card, but the flagship image of the Caitlin Clark Prism rookie sold recently for how much? 5,000, 15,000, or about 50,000.
Sorry, say that. Which card was it?
Yeah, which Caitlin card? Sorry, say it again.
The Gold Vinyl 1/1 NFT card,
NFT
digital card. Caitlin Clark Prism.
Doesn't Spinatron have that? I remember. I thought I could have sworn I saw his Instagram account.
He might have bought it. I can't remember.
What was the middle price?
15,000.
15,000. 15,000 sounds about right, but I'm gonna say there's, if you're crypto rich, you're different rich, right? So it's I'm gonna say 50K because the Caitlin Clark and the market is crazy, and I think it's worth that. I have a 1/1 Vlahovic Prism Black. And I see my offers that I'm getting. It's nowhere near $50,000. So like I get offers like $80, $90, and are like, who's buying these? So I'm gonna go complete opposite and say some crypto rich guy is dropping this $50K on this card, this fake card.
Okay, that's interesting reasoning.
I have no other reasoning except I can't imagine Clark at this point is going to switch up the middle choice. So I'm going to go 15.
15 makes sense.
I love how John thinks, but I played a long game. The answer was 51,248.
Crazy.
I set you up for the pattern and then I switch it up right at the end.
Always get me good.
But yeah, you're right. Crypto rich is a different kind of rich, apparently. So, 51K for the Caitlin Clark Gold Vinyl 1/1 NFT. All right, not too bad. We'll do another round of quiz show in a future episode. Okay, let's end off this episode with our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. All right, in our show notes, I kind of revealed to you what my pick one was. So I'll start things off because you already know what it is, but I'll share with our listeners. Would you rather have, as an investment, the WWE card? I don't know if you saw in Toronto, actually. It was held in Toronto, the latest wrestling event where John Cena famously turned into a bad guy after 16, 17 years of being a good guy. He teamed up with The Rock, and then our boy Travis Scott was there. And so there's a triple on-card auto, 1/1 of John Cena, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and Travis Scott. Okay? Or LeBron just hit his 50,000 career points mark. Of course, Topps now is marking that moment, and there is a 1/1 with the what do you call it? His armband,
Right.
With the Nike logo on the
seen it.
armband.
Yeah,
That's going to be
yeah.
the relic, and then an autograph 1/1. So which card would you have as a?
I already
as a
know John's
long-term
answer,
investment?
so.
Yeah, you guys, come on. This was set up to make me look like the biggest
he's
hater.
acting like it's like a hard decision.
We know what the LeBron haters going to pick.
You guys set me up again.
John, well, you go first.
Oh,
then.
come on.
Confirm or deny which one you're going with.
Okay. It's a legitimate tough choice because I mean, from an investment standpoint, like LeBron at 50,000 points. That's an unbelievable feat. Regardless of you can hate that he has the longevity and all that stuff, but he's a monster. Like I'm not going to deny LeBron being this athletic specimen that just never gets injured. And I mean, 50,000 points. I don't honestly think anyone is ever going to touch that number. And it's a 1/1, and there's a relic from the actual game, and it's an autograph.
But it's LeBron James.
Plus LeBron, yeah. But on the
LeBron. I'm thinking.
But on the other side, I mean, we're. I think the three of us are not really into WWE, but Will is. I had no idea it was in Toronto, but from what I can garner from social media, this was a pretty monstrous moment in WWF history. Like it feels like this was one of the biggest moments in WWE that's gaining traction. Like we all know about it. There's nothing else in WWE that's happened over the 10 years that none of us would have known was like a big event or whatever. Like this was a legitimate kind of like seeping into pop culture kind of moment. So to have a triple auto from that moment is pretty awesome too. And I think that card is incredible. Like I think there's many collectors who are going to want it. It's The Rock, John Cena, and then Travis Scott. Kind of blends a whole bunch of pop culture.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I have to, by default, I have to stick to sports. And from a sports cards perspective, the LeBron 50,000 points, historic moment, relic auto, I have to go with that one. I think that's the one investment wise in the future is going to be worth way more money.
I feel like we peer pressured into saying that.
Could I have picked WWE prior to the haterade? Maybe.
All right, Hyung, what do you think?
I think well, it's easy one for me, but I think because obviously LeBron is new with autos now, with Topps. This is the first like big moment. I would say USA basketball was a big moment, but like this is another big moment, kind of like the Ohtani 50-50. So for me, there's a huge hype around that scope anyways, and LeBron autos. So if you look at previous history of any early 2000s or mid 2000s, even late 2000s LeBron autos, they fetch a huge premium, and LeBron hasn't been signing. So for me, it's like, this is what you want. You're witnessing kind of like John said, I don't think it's going to be very tough to, replicate this unless science totally changes the sport and people can play until they're like 50 years old. Right. So to me, it's, and LeBron's kind of doing that right now. So you're going to have to replicate a career like that. So I think it's a great chase, great, card, because it is, what's it called? They have it, marked as like the 50,000 points, as well. So for me, yeah, it's a LeBron easy. I'm not into WWE, nor does that whole pop culture kind of like, I guess, get me excited. Even if there was opportunity, there might be opportunity. It wouldn't be something that I would probably pick regardless, just based on sports.
It's a great 1v1 though, Clark.
Yeah.
Really good.
So it's biased. It's a biased answer. Yes.
Okay. Man, I want to say the WWE because I'm getting it. I'm getting it now. And kind of what you said, John,
You're getting
like
the
I'm looking at
101?
the social media, I'm getting like the chills. I'm like, why am I getting the chills watching this footage of John Cena turning heel? And Travis Scott, there was a clip, I don't know if you saw the Travis Scott clip, talking with Triple H after the show, and he's getting amped.
Oh, really?
Like he even said on air, he's like, this is low key better than performing. Wow. He's like, he loves just being in the rink with The Rock and Cena and just, just living this out, right? So I think WWE is growing. We had Will on the program a couple weeks ago, and I'm seeing the appeal, and I think it's just growing. I think it's, and you look at the footage, and it's, someone else said this on X, that wrestling is like a soap opera for guys.
It is.
You see,
100% it is.
You see like the reaction, like people are like genuinely going out of their minds. Like they're pulling their hair. When Cena kicked Cody Rhodes in the balls, they're literally pulling their hair out of their heads. And it's like they're just going berserk, and it's just hilarious to watch.
But the culture is really strong in WWE,
right? And I think because of that, there's all you need is one really rich collector that has that kind of
that's true,
that loves wrestling, and can this card in a few years go for obscene amount of money? I could totally see it. And then also, like, they're selling these replica championship belts for $1,000 at the Rogers Center.
Crazy.
People are buying them like it's nothing. It's like, of course I'm gonna buy one. $1,000 right there. You know what I mean? So people that are passionate about wrestling, I think if they can afford to, they will spend the money for a collectible like this, especially this 1/1 card. So that being said, I mean, if the LeBron card didn't have the armband with the Nike logo, I think that clinched it for me. That clinched it. If it's just an auto, WWE card, triple auto, all the way.
You pulled a John.
So, someone had to pull a John, because John didn't pull a John.
John didn't pull a John today.
So I had to do it for him. All right. Hyung, you're a 1v1.
Yeah, so last week, we talked a bit about Wyatt Langford. I see a lot of value. Actually, his prices are going up too. So that's going to be the other side still, because I believe he is a buy in the right cards. There's some cheap cards, some overpriced cards for Wyatt too. So that's the thing with collecting in general. It's like when you say somebody's overpriced, it might not be true in all instances, right? So there's other cards that might be undervalued within a player. And I feel like Wyatt Langford is that person. So I'm going to pick two cards. But this past week, the story in the news have been this prospect, New York Yankees prospect. His name is George Lombard Jr. Okay, so he's actually he's New York Yankees number 2 prospect behind Jason Dominguez. And he's a 19-year-old kid, kind of like a A-Rod / Carlos Correa type, like I would say comp. Right? It's a 19-year-old kid. This guy ends up hitting like 2 home runs. And as a 19-year-old in spring training games in front of the big league squad. So there was huge amounts of hype around him. And I think a couple years, or last year when his Bowman Chrome was released, huge hype. Like, this guy's the next A-Rod, this guy's the next Correa, this guy's the next deal, New York Yankees prospect. So there was a huge hype. And then he ended up hitting like 230. And his value tanked. So I feel like his cards are super cheap right now. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up the selling you guys on George Lombard. That this guy is kind of like a big time prospect, right? Like, and rightfully so. I did my due diligence. This guy is a player I think that can help New York Yankees in the future. He has all the mix of athleticism, kind of like 5-tool talent. The power's not there yet. The hit tool's not there yet, but super high IQ player, good physical athletic build. So you have all the tools that you want as like kind of like that 5-tool shortstop or middle infielder or third base. So I'm his gold auto, his Bowman Chrome, true gold auto, a PSA 9 version, just recently sold for $1,200. Okay. And this was, there is a little bump because he has a little bit of hype. This card probably wouldn't have sold for $1,200 in September or October or November, right? So recently sold for $1,200. Sorry, I'm going to say that again. It recently sold for $1,000. It's a true gold. And I'm going to pair that up with Wyatt Langford's Bowman Chrome first. A gold shimmer though, not true gold. That sold for $1,200. They're both PSA 9s. So are you going to go with the George Lombard PSA 9 true gold refractor out of 50, or Wyatt Langford's Gold Shimmer out of 50?
Oh, 1,000 for the gold seems a lot, but I guess it must have been pretty high back then, and it came down to 1,000.
Definitely came down. Yeah, at release, George Lombard was a chase in that set.
I don't even recall that name. Um, I, I'm not a huge fan of Gold Shimmer, but I think it's just too deep into prospecting for me. I get it's Yankees, but if I'm investing money as a casual in terms of Bowman prospecting, I think it would make more sense for somebody like me to put money into somebody like Wyatt Langford, regardless of the parallel, even if it's green or something, you're kind of, it's a little bit more ugly. I would put something into money where he's proving himself in the big leagues rather than prospecting. But I get it, right? If Lombard comes back next year and like he just he doesn't even need to have a good season. Like he just comes out firing and is hot for like 2 weeks and is just a flash in the pan, you have some incredible return, like incredible. So he's certainly set himself up to have that spark. So I get it. I get why you could take advantage. But I'll go the safe route, and I don't know. I'm actually kind of tempted to switch it, but maybe I'm talking myself out of it. But I gotta.
True gold.
I know the true gold is really getting me. No, I'll stick to the safe answer. I'll go Wyatt.
Nice.
I'm gonna go Wyatt as well. I don't know. Maybe it's because you biased me from the last episode. I'm like, okay, I'm all in on Wyatt too. It's like he was talking him up so much that I started putting him on my watch list on eBay. So, and the other side is I'm warming up to shimmers or even waves, like not true gold. They're
totally
numbered to
underrated.
50, right? Yeah, and I'm like, if I brought a gold wave or gold shimmer to a show, I'm sure I could easily trade that with someone that's interested in that player because they're gonna look at it. It's gonna look just as nice. It's numbered to 50 still, right? And I think I can make a play with cards that aren't true color.
Right.
So, so for that reason, and Wyatt being, with already in the big leagues and with his talent already, I'm going to go with Langford.
Nice. So the reason why I paired these two is because one, I'm big on Wyatt, so I think $1,200 for a gold shimmer in his first chrome, I think that's a good purchase in general. I think there's a lot of upsides. The problem is, like, do we see Wyatt Langford to become that person this year? I think he's going to have a phenomenal year to prove that he is that type of player. But I think to reach his true potential where his price goes bonkers, it would be 2-3 years down the road. Now, could he do it this year? Absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised because he is more of a mature guy. He's not a high school guy. He's an SEC college kind of player that has the experience that is needed to be an impact player in the big leagues right away. So there's that factor that I'm taking with Wyatt. So when you guys said he is definitely the safer pick in this, 100% true. I think Lombard had so much hype that, he has to now perform. But they're in different cycles is my point. Where Wyatt is in that major league cycle that we've already experienced, and now it's like you're buying cheap. Whereas Lombard, it's like he's navigating through the minor leagues. So as long as he starts becoming a top 10 prospect within the whole MLB top 100 prospect, that true gold auto can go bonkers, in my opinion. Like, it could go to way overpriced, way hyped, and you see a little bit of it here. So the question is, will Lombard be able to hold his own in the minor leagues? I think it's easier to hold your own in the minor leagues as a 19-year-old than it is a 22-year-old holding their own in the major leagues. Because obviously minor leagues, you have a bunch of 19-year-old kids you're playing against, 20-year-old kids. You're not playing against 30-year-old men that's already developed. So I like the combination of upside that Lombard has in terms of his. Now, way riskier though, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, it's like I think the better buy at $9.99 or $1,000 US is on that Lombard gold because it is a true gold. And whether or not Hobby Logic we could justify gold shimmer is just as gold as true gold because it's numbered to 50. That's just the supply. The people that are in the game dictates the demand. So there's always going to be a larger demand with limited supply of the true gold that is going to justify the inflated price. And like I said, I believe that gold shimmers, gold waves, gold lavas, any low numbered parallel that's not a true refractor is undervalued, or you could say it's properly valued, and true refractors are way overpriced in general. Right. But the market seems to continue to say we're willing to pay for that. Yeah. So until that stops, I'm going to follow the market in terms of the trends. But from a collection standpoint, I think any gold shimmers, like you said, is a great buy. But in this case, I'm going true gold because of the potential that it has from a short-term play perspective.
Yeah, understood.
That's
good one. Bad. All right, Johnny.
Okay, so in honor of our Topps Series 1 Rip Night, I'm going to go from an investment perspective. Which would you rather?
Okay.
Topps Series 1 Barry Bonds auto. I think depending on the style and image, I think there's two different card stocks.
Yeah.
But it ranges anywhere from 1,200 to 1,600 recently sold USD versus the 2025 Frank Thomas no name insert recently sold at auction for 1,700.
Clark did something similar to this, no?
Oh, did you? Sorry.
No, I'm not sure. I remember we talked about the no-name Frank Thomas.
We talked about both, but I don't think we pit it against each other.
Right.
Okay.
Is the Frank Thomas auto?
Last episode. My bad, guys. No, it's just the no-name.
The no-name.
To the original no-name. Yeah. So the Frank Thomas no-name insert, I think it's SSP, I think.
Yeah.
Sold for 1,700 versus a Barry Bonds auto. Investment-wise, if you're spending your money, $1,500 or whatever it is, which would you rather choose?
I'll go. It's easy for me, I think. Just Barry Bonds. I think the auto. I mean, unless the hard part is whether the whole steroid thing, the whole, the stigma that is attached to Barry Bonds. I think, we discussed this on a previous pod too. I think that stigma is eroding, as time goes by, and people are going to see Barry Bonds for the player he was, pre and post the steroid era, and just kind of, give credit where it's due. And also, I feel like Barry Bonds is trying to change his image a little bit more too these days.
He's around more, yeah.
To be more likable, I guess, So that's another factor. And Frank Thomas, like, the no name is it's almost like a gimmicky card for me. I guess I would just rather probably have a lower graded version of the original no name if I could find one than a high grade or a cleaner version of the 2025 Topps Series 1 version. So personal preference at the end of the day, I guess, but I'm going with Barry Bonds.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as Clark, where I rather have a nice copy of the actual no-name Frank Thomas card, because I think the true value is in that card. Whereas, and here's the thing, Frank Thomas in general is just underrated. I think his career was unbelievable. I got to watch him growing up, so Frank Thomas was like a big, a right-handed hitter that I love. But I think the combination, one, auto versus non-auto, like that's a big win. The other thing is Barry Bonds hasn't been signing, so this is now new. And Barry Bonds autos, try finding them in the 90s or 2000s. It's like, good luck finding any like nice auto of Barry Bonds. Like it's next to impossible unless you get an IP auto, because the ink fades on a lot of those, upper deck,
right.
SP, cards. They use black autos that fade. So for me, Barry Bonds autos, I think, are going to be a thing. And they are. That's why you see the justification of why people would be willing to pay that much for a so-called steroid user, right? At the end of the day, I like I said, we talked about this before. I think that whole issue with Barry Bonds, that stigma is going to start disappearing, because you realize how good Barry Bonds was. And then when you compare apples to apples and really dig into this issue, I guarantee you're going to be a lot more lenient on kind of like the stipulations and facts. And for that reason, I think there's so much more upside in the Barry Bonds auto, just because his autos are rare and he is the greatest of all time, period. Coming from a baseball player, regardless, there's no one that even comes close to Barry Bonds at this point. So for me, I'm going to go with, if I hold that Barry Bonds auto, I'm happy with that. Right? It wouldn't be a resell. It'd be like, this guy's the greatest baseball player of all time, period. And I have one of his autos. That would be the justification. So I'm going to go Barry Bonds.
Yeah, I think it's a sweep. I'm with you, Clark. I think the Frank Thomas clearly is selling for more, I think, because of the rarity. But it is, some people can say it's a bit gimmicky. I mean, first of all, kudos to Topps for putting in Barry Bonds autos and putting in, the Frank Thomas no name, like putting in these chases. Like, I love seeing this rather than putting in Ray waivers, just some additional parallels. Like, just putting in brand new, fresh chases, whether they are quasi gimmicky or not. Awesome. And it makes collecting fun again. So kudos to them. But yeah, in terms of investment, I think both cards are going to go down, right? The hype is going to simmer. Mm-hmm. And the will probably end up being like sub $1,000. But I think Barry Bonds the auto is easily the way to go, for sure.
Yep, good one. You know what? If in our rip session tonight, if I hit the Frank Thomas no name, I'm going to edit this and say I'm going to go for the Frank Thomas to hype it up.
If one of us hits any of those, man, that would be...
We're going to be like, this is the best card ever. Here's why.
We'll redo this segment. All kidding aside, thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. We appreciate you guys. And, our numbers are, for 2025, we've seen a nice bump. So, we appreciate all the new listeners coming in to Cards to the Moon. And we'll have a brand new episode for you guys next week. Talk to you then. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.